Hi, Rick here from Marriott Models, DJI dealer from the UK and RC specialist for over 40 years. If you have an Inspire and you were unfortunate enough to have crashed it, you may well end up with an arm looking a bit like this. Unfortunately with Inspires, they don't bounce very well, and when you crash them, they do tend to snap the arms. Now this is going to be probably more of a how to change, not so much of a how to change an arm, just showing you how I change an arm. The problem is DJI don't sell all the parts direct to the public, they only sell them to authorized repair centers. So this video I'm just going to show you how I actually go about changing an arm for an Inspire. Now I'm going to be doing this in our workshop, so it is an active workshop, so you'll probably hear a lot of noise in the background, phones ringing, and I'll probably have to keep starting and stopping the video when I get called away, so there may be a few cuts throughout the video. So on this particular Inspire, although it doesn't look broken, it has actually got a cracked arm here. Normally they're actually broken right through, but in this particular case, customer has actually repaired this with super glue, which actually gives quite a strong repair, but clearly it's not going to last, so to do it properly, I'm going to replace the arm. Now, when we get our arms from DJI, they come like this, which is a complete arm assembly. Now, I'm not going to change the whole arm because it requires quite a lot of work changing this mechanism. I've done it before, but generally you end up with about a day's work because the way that the arms pivot is through a pin that runs through here and the whole craft is built around it. And the only part we actually need is this part here. So to save a bit of time, I've stripped one of these arms down already, and then we're going to get left with this, which is the actual arm, which is inside here. Now, a lot of people say, but can we not just buy a new tube and replace that? But the problem is DJI actually glue the mounts on, so that's already glued on there, so you can't actually take it off. But if you had some way of, you know, cutting that out and drilling it and then sort of cleaning up the housing, you could use these again. But this is basically the part we need. So I've stripped this already away from the arm. So what I'm going to do now is I'm now going to strip this arm down so we can basically pull the motor mounts off. So the first thing we need to do is take all the motor mount screws out of the arm. I've already taken a couple out. So I'm just going to pivot that around. Give myself a bit of room. Start taking these out. Sorry if this goes out of focus, it's just my camera's fixed focus. Mat for your screws. So that's the motor mounting screw, so the motor now will actually come loose. But the first thing we need to do before we take all it off, we've actually got to take the light bridge antenna out. So we need a small Phillips screwdriver. 1 second. In here, and we're going to take off the front of the light bridge paddle. Nope. Come out. Never mind. Okie dokie. Alright, put that down. I'm just going to move these out of the way, give me a bit of room. Now, before we can take off the motor mount, because this is all quite loose, and this arm as well, see that's now coming off, but before we can do that we actually have to unsolder the light bridge paddle. So we just pull that forward, and this is actually just stuck on here, so just slowly bump, and that comes off. Put that aside, and then we have the light bridge paddle which is soldered on. So we need to turn the soldering iron on. Okay, so we're going to need to unsolder this. I've got my soldering iron all heated up. Now, as I'm on my own here, I'm using a set of helping hands just to hold the paddle still. Now, what we have to do is, there's two solder points. There's the outer, because it's coaxial cable, so there's an outer and there's an inner. So what I have to do is heat that solder up and then lift it away from the paddle. So what I tend to do, so I can actually do this on my own, is I use a modeling knife, which I'll put in behind the coaxial cable, just to apply a little bit of pressure on it, and then I heat up the end of the actual connection. Ooh, and that's should be now. Sometimes it bounces back, so that's that now off, and then I can do that, and then all we do is now it's important that you don't actually heat the outer of the coaxial cable, as in because it can end up ruining the insulation. So I tend to go in on the side, just heat it enough and then pull it away, and that's it, done. Simple as, and that's the light bridge antenna. These really do soak up the heat, so it's really important that you don't overheat them. Otherwise, you can't buy these on their own, very hard to get, so you don't want to kind of ruin those. So once we've got that out, we can now actually take the actual arm off. Now, there's one little bit to take off first. There's a little sticky pad. It's just a little cover. I'll lift that up. Ugh. There goes a modelling knife. And another one. So just peel that off, and then just put that aside for later, because that'll need to be stuck back down. And then this can all basically lift away. Now there's a couple of connections inside here. For example, the ESCs, etc. are all kind of attached. So there's little clips which you just, I don't know if you can see that, I think you can. So we pull that one off. Then we can pull the cables out. Take this pad off. And that's that off, put that aside. Unplug these. And you have now removed the motor assembly, so that can all be put aside. So what I'm going to do the other side now, but I'm not going to show you because it's done in exactly the same way. Okay, so I've now removed both the motor mounts. So it's worth also noting that, remember, you are going to have a left and a right hand motor. So when you go to put them back on, make sure you get them in the right corner, otherwise it's definitely not going to work. So the thing we have to do now is we have to remove the damaged arm. So what we need to do is we need to take all these screws out here. Let's put them out. You've got 4 along the top, 4 along the bottom. These are, you use a 2mm hex driver to take these out. So if you've had a DJI Phantom, flame wheel, etc., exactly the same size as screwdriver for those. Fortunately, there's no torques, etc. It's kind of a bit of a pain. The new Phantom 3 is just held together with a lot of torques of different types and size, and it's a right pain to take apart now, compared to the older Phantom 2, which I used to enjoy working on. Right, so now that's that little hatch comes off. Now there's a little security tape down at the bottom there. Unfortunately, you have crashed your Inspire, so now it really doesn't matter that you're knackering your warranty, because let's face it, it isn't going to be covered anymore. Now there's 2 little rubber spacers in there. It's just to stop the arm moving. So we're taking them off, and I usually just press them into there, which is exactly where they'll be going when you put them back on. Put them aside. Now there's one other screw that needs to come off here. It's a 2-sided one, so we'll need 2 2mm drivers, which I've got. Let's put them in. So there. Go in from either side. Let's take these out, and this will now allow the arm to come off the bracket that keeps it at the right angle when the undercarriage is going up and down, and now that will now pull away. Now one thing I can actually tell, this is an earlier Inspire, because although they have different versions like A, B, C and D, some of the differences you can see from the outside and some of them from the inside. So what we do now is just basically poke all this cabling back through and just pull that off. So that all comes out, all its gizzards, and that's the arm. So that's the damaged arm there. You can see there it's all quite rough where the customer actually glued it. And to be honest with you, that is actually incredibly strong. Oh, I tell you what, that would not have broken in a hurry. I would actually say that's quite a good repair. The only downside, I don't know if you can see with the angle, is unfortunately it was glued on it with a bend. There's a bit of a bend there, but that is actually incredibly strong. But as I say, you might not get a good screw-on joint and you could have an issue later on. If that folds in mid-air, you'll be in right trouble. Right, now have the new arm. So as I say, I stripped this off the whole complete arm as we get them from DJI. So because this is basically the only bit we need. So that is now ready to go on. So the first thing we need to do is to feed the cables back through. Just put that in there, there. Nope, let's just put right through. So I'll just move that up a bit and see it a bit better. It's a little bit fingers and thumbs, but soon go down. I'm going to have to feed them back out at the other end. Make sure obviously you're going to get the right ones, so that going that way and that one going that way, otherwise again you'll be driving the wrong motors. That'll be a complete disaster. Right, start seeing the cables poking out the other side, although that one actually needs to come through the bottom of the arm. Let's push that in a bit further. Right, oh. So we need to get out this ESC cable, because it goes a different way. There it is there. Sorry if my arm's in the way. Also be careful, snag the cable. That's going to be coming out there. Same with this one. Sorry if I'm off shot. Got a pair of, makes it probably a wee bit easier. There we go, no point in getting them all sandwiched in. And then, sorry if I keep knocking out a shot just so I can see it. Pull these cables through. So pulling these up, allow all this assembly to go back. Right, so we can now place that back in. There we go. Gosh, refocus. Right, so that goes back on there. So we've got all our cables sticking out each end. So that's ideal. And then we can clamp this back on. So you've got the little rubber pads in there. So just make sure they stay in place, and that goes back up. Just make sure that turns freely. Now, the screws actually do come with thread lock on them, but I prefer just to apply a little bit more. Again, if this came loose, come on, it'd be a bit of a problem. Even if you just put it on 4 of them, it would be enough. Okay, so we've got all the screws back in, so what we're going to do now, we're now going to put on the arm that controls the angle of the legs. Now, as we're going to have to actually adjust the whole angle of this later on, we're not going to slide this over the ratchet quite yet here. So we're just going to hook it in on the bottom, put the screw back in. You touch the thread lock, although there is still plenty of thread lock left on the screw, but you can't be too careful. Another driver again. Screw that in. Tighten. Right, and then we'll be coming back to that later on. Righty-ho, so. Okay, now we're going to reconnect everything back up bit by bit. So the first thing we want to do is to clip on the ESC cable. fidgety. Is that clipped in? Then we have the motor wires. They go in. Now, important that you put the tape, which secures the cables and also stops them bumping around and damaging anything. So they go in like that, and then just pull that nice and tight. There we go. Now, important that you check that your light bridge wire is actually sticking out the bottom, because we'll be pushing that through the undercarriage leg in a minute. And then we can start feeding all this back through. Now, this is just a right fidgety job, so I'm just going to kind of bash away. It never seems to be the same way twice. Now, just poke all that down there, motor out there, ESC cable down in there. Now, the fidgety part is this light bridge antenna cable, which DJI give you absolutely no slack at all on, has to go down through a small gap in the motor mount. So what I have to do is, sorry, my hand's in the way. Just going to feed it down. Yep, there we go. Don't know if you can see the light bridge cable poking out the bottom there. There we go, that's perfect. So that now means, as long as we've got no cable snag, that's all kind of gone back snug. Sorry if that went out of focus there. Right, we're going to put the screws back in. Actually forgetting, again, the screws will have thread lock left on them, but I prefer just it is a motor screw after all. Put the thread lock back on. Just in case of getting the motor lined up, all the screw holes all lined up, and then that will go back through. Now, you don't go mad with these, you just turn them till it stops, the screw stops, and then just give it a wee nick up. Don't go mad because you're putting a metal screw which is eventually going into a metal motor mount, but it does go through plastic as well. Okay, so that's the motor mount assembly all stuck in correctly. Oh yeah, remember the little sticky bit we took off earlier? We can now put that back on. Not functional, but I want to make it look nice once it's been repaired. For customers coming to get their models back, they kind of want it looking better than when they brought it in. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put the light bridge antenna back on. So this is a slightly tricky job. Again, to make sure it's all prepped up. So we're going to be using the helping hands once again, like that. And obviously if you had somebody to help you, you wouldn't need this, but I tend to do a lot of work on my own, so I will need it. What I tend to do is just get that already aligned so it's ready to literally solder straight on. So I've got my soldering iron. Now what I usually do is just get some fresh solder just on that tip there, on the light bridge pedal, and then what I tend to do, just get that about in position. Then I can use my pliers just to help hold it as I solder it. Now it is literally just a touch, and you see that's on, and then we just slowly take that off because the actual point of solder is really, really thin. So the next thing we're going to do is to solder the outer coaxial part. Now this is the really important part. You must not just put that on there and squish that down. You'll melt right through the insulation and you'll join the two coaxial cores together, and that will be completely useless. The light bridge paddle will do nothing. You can cut these back, but you've only got a very small amount of meat on it. So what I tend to do is I tend to heat the actual paddle part so that the coaxial cable will be touching it in turn, and then we'll all kind of melt down quite the thing. So just kind of melt in on the side there. Ooh, you need to watch your hand because it does get hot. There we go. So what I've... Ooh, not quite taken there. And there we go, that's that soldered on. Now we just need to pop that back on, like there. And then I got the light bridge cover, plastic cover, took off earlier. That just lift that up a bit. That just clips in like that, goes on like that and stuck in. And then if I lift that up, then we just need to, sorry, I'll be a wee bit out of shot when I do this, but it's a pretty straightforward job. Just put the screws back on the back of the paddles. Right, so that's that corner all done. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to do the back one. I'm not going to show you how to do it because it's done obviously in exactly the same way. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to get the legs at the correct angle, so you can see the one that I've repaired. I can actually move that independently from this one, and they sit at a special angle. So it's important before we tighten up the small screw in the back of this clamp. If I spin that round, there's a small screw in there, and that clamps that ratchet on the arm. But we need to make sure the arm's at the right angle. So what I tend to use, this is actually a camber gauge off of a model car, when you used to do model car racing, and basically use that, a lot of it. In fact, I'm just going to move my seat because I've got to get down low to do it and do it by eye. So take the measurement of this one, and I'm just doing this by eye. That is because it's imperative these arms are at the same angle, like that, and then I can basically do the same with this one before I tighten it up. That's that, perfect. And then this is my 2-bolt driver, try not to move anything, just tighten that up. That's that tight, so that is now solid like the other one. Now, one other thing we have to do is, on the new arm, there's this tightening nut here which is just hand tight. Now, there is actually a small grub screw hole in there for you to tighten up, but I prefer not to do that because it damages the thread. So what I tend to do, just spin that off, and I'm just going to put a small amount of thread lock on here. All that screw actually does, it just stops this inflow in and out. So it's not overly important, but doing it this way, that way I don't damage the actual thread. I have to sort of mess about with it. But basically what you're doing is, you'll have a small amount of play in that arm, which is okay. I'm just going to take that up till it kind of stops, and then just back it off slightly. And then what I usually do is, where that screw hole was, just pump some thread lock into there, and then that's that. You can actually leave that to dry. Well, I hope you found that video interesting on how we go about replacing the arm on an Inspire. We do offer full in-house repairs on Inspires, Phantom 3s and other DJI quadcopters. The only reason why we're able to do the repairs is because my customers support me buying the models from me in the first place. So it's always good to support your local dealer, authorised dealer. So always check the DJI website for a full list of all the dealers, and these are the ones to go for, because if you support the dealers, they'll be there when you need a quick repair. We can turn an Inspire repair like this around like within a day, where if you go to DJI customer support, it's going to be 4 to 6 weeks. But again, as I say, it's only possible because people keep me in business, not buying from dodgy dealers on the internet or grey imports direct from China, etc. So I'm Rick from Marinfo Models, DJI dealer from the UK and RC specialist for over 40 years. Thank you.